we leaving? Korra asked, looking back at Sokka and Katara, who had followed Aang to this long pathway to a large stone door. I already told you what I found. There's nothing good about staying here. Aang says there might be some survivors in here. He seemed to be pretty convinced. Katara said, her voice sounding like she herself wasn't all that convinced, but for some reason she was still willing to drag them all along this mess anyway. Would he be that convinced if he saw the helmet that was buried in the snow? Korra replied. Katara looked back at her, giving her a warning look. I'm not gonna tell him, but you know the Fire Nation just as much as I do. That's not going to be the only thing he finds here. For the record, I'm with Korra. This seems like a really bad idea. Sokka replied, crossing his arms. Aang had seemed like such a nice kid. He was innocent. Way too innocent to be experiencing all of this so soon, whether he was the Avatar or not. Hey guys, we're here! Aang stopped in front of a giant stone obelisk that looked like two large doors reaching easily 50 feet into the air. There was a lock embedded on the front of it. Nothing on the door itself had seemed damaged. See? This thing literally can't be opened by anything except airbending. Even if the Fire Nation did show up here, there's no way they would have been able to get inside. Huh. Now that you say it, that actually makes sense. Sokka said, looking the thing up and down. I can't even see any marks on it. Told you so. And maybe whoever's inside can teach me more about airbending. Make sure I'm really down with this whole Avatar thing. Heck, Korra, they might even be able to show you something. Aang smiled. Korra grimaced. She couldn't exactly afford to pass up an opportunity to learn airbending, even if she was sure that there was nothing good on the other side of this door. So she just found herself nodding. Okay then, mighty airbender, crack this thing open, Korra replied, crossing her arms and tapping her foot, forcing a smile on her face. Aang guided her to the door, making sure that she watched as he made his specific motions to guide air to the lock. You see? It's like this. Hey, maybe you can open it with me. Yeah, sure, Korra replied, studying the door. She wasn't going to let any opportunity to practice airbending pass her by. She could kind of bend 3 elements, but if she was being honest with herself, she could only bend 2 decently, and she would hardly call herself a master over either of them. Experience was experience. But when she tried to replicate Aang's movements for herself, nothing happened. Literally nothing happened. She would have had better luck blowing on the thing. Or maybe I can help you next time, or the other 50 times after that. Her eye bitterly twitched as Aang opened the door by himself. The air flowed around him just as easily as it always did, and the door cracked open. A wave of wind rushed out at the two of them, like it had been building pressure for over 100 years, which definitely made sense to Korra. Inside, they watched as hundreds of stone eyes stared down at them. Thousands of them, in fact. Oh, great. This isn't creepy, Korra said, staring up at them. Yeah, just a massive pile of stone soldiers staring down at us as we enter their crypts. That is so normal, Sokka replied. They aren't soldiers, Aang replied, looking back at all of them. He stepped on a platform in front of one of the statues, one whose eyes seemed to follow him wherever he went. The one that was the statue of Avatar Roku, Aang's previous reincarnation. I think they're us, Aang replied. Korra glanced to the center of the room, where the statue of Roku was. There was another statue there, illuminated by shadow. She stepped onto the platform beside it, seeing its eyes following her too. And when she looked up at it, she saw that her inkling was right. This was indeed Avatar Kyoshi, her past life. That was how it went after all. The earthbending avatar reincarnated into the water tribe. Firebending avatars reincarnated into one of the air temples. She was looking up at her past, staring into the eyes of a woman that she supposedly was at one point or another. She looked cold, a lot more serious than Korra could ever imagine herself being. If anything, she looked like a soldier, a warrior. Do you see anything around here yet? Anybody? Korra asked flatly. Any airbenders or a place where they could have went? Aang looked around. There didn't seem to be any people here. His face fell a little. No, but I'm sure there's something. There's a lot of pathways in this building, right? He ran off to the side. He could see a space that led into a lower part of the air temple, a secret passageway of sorts. I'll go take a look. Before anybody could tell Aang to stop, he was already out of sight completely. Katara looked over at Korra. seeing that she was still locking eyes with her past self. You should probably go after him, Korra said. If I'm even partway right about this, and Aang finds something that he shouldn't. Katara nodded at her, rushing off as Sokka walked next to Korra. He looked up at the large stone edifice towering over them. You know, it doesn't look that bad, Sokka said, a joking tone evident in his voice. Korra still didn't move. He nudged her a little bit. Come on, isn't this place kind of a big deal for you? Shouldn't you be a bit more excited about it? If I'm being honest, I'm more on edge than anything else, Korra replied. Sokka looked at her. He knew it couldn't just be because of what was going on with Aang. She acted differently than now when she found that firebender helmet buried in the snow. What was happening now, whatever it felt a bit more personal. You know, I'm not a bad person to talk to. Back in the village, a lot of people came to me with their problems, Sokka bragged. I'm assuming that's because you were the cause of at least half of them, Korra replied. Sokka gave the girl a smarmy smile and shrugged. Hey, doesn't mean they didn't come to me, he said. Korra found herself laughing a little bit. There you go, there's that smile. I'm gonna need it. I can't be the only funny guy in this group. You were supposed to be the lighthearted Avatar. It's just her, Korra said, looking up at her. I knew I was Kyoshi. I mean, how could I not, right? But I was just so excited about being the Avatar, I never really stopped to think that I was a different person before. I don't think I could ever picture myself acting like she did. Look at her. She looks like she never cracked a smile in her life. Seriously? That's it? Doesn't seem like much. You're reincarnated. You're a different person now. Who cares about this one? He knocked Kyoshi on the leg with his foot. Right? Yeah, sure, she said quietly. We should probably just follow Katara. Korra stopped. Sokka walked up to her, looking closely at her face and seeing that it was stoic. When he looked closer, he saw that her eyes were flickering, on and off, bright and then dark. It was the Avatar state. Korra hunched over, grabbing at her head. Her breathing increased until she was hyperventilating. Get away from me right now, she ordered. She could barely see Sokka with her light-filled eyes. The image of Sokka got replaced by the image of something. It looked like a corpse. The corpse of an air nomad. Aang, he must have found something. Something that triggered this. It felt different this time. The last time she used the Avatar state was when they were under attack by the Fire Nation. It was self-preservation, instinct. They were attacking without thinking, channeling their thoughts, their minds, their powers into singular discerning strikes. But now it was different. Her mind wasn't clear, it was full. There was rage boiling in every part of her body. Anger that filled her spirit that wasn't hers. It was all-encompassing. Little by little, it was like she was being swallowed. Ed hated this girl. He was slowly coming to that conclusion. Sure, it was nice of her to offer him supplies, to make sure that he was okay along his journey, make sure that he didn't die of starvation along the road somewhere. Very friendly of her to invite him to her house. It, however, wasn't super friendly of her to have him crawl underground for what had to be a mile and a half through an underground tunnel, on his hands and knees. Seriously, we're still going? Where the hell do you live, a cave? Ed asked to the girl ahead of him. She laughed wildly enough that the sound of her voice bounced off the walls, warbling through his body. Dude, I wish, she said. She shifted her foot, the ground opening up above her. She crawled out, reaching a hand down to Ed, who took it as he was lifted up to a perfectly cut lawn. There was a giant hedge wall around them that towered far above them. It was like the place was cut off from the rest of the city. A light washed over half his face, making him turn toward its source. It was a large structure, perfectly clean from the outside, trees framing its white surface from every direction. It was a mansion? Ed realized, turning to the girl. No wonder you didn't care about the money. Huh, you sound less surprised than I thought you would. Toph blinked. She felt the nerves that had been building up in her body spring out. The people that she met in that world, the tournament setting where she met Ed, would never let her live this down. The fact that she was a pampered rich kid. That was, if they ever talked to her again. Like, way less surprised. Well, maybe I would be surprised, but I kinda know someone with the same thing going on. A prince, believe it or not. And he sure didn't act like one. It's hard to surprise me after that guy. Ed's face fell as he spoke, images of Ling flooding his mind. Ling was stuck in that place with envy too. Hopefully Ed managed to get him out okay, and he wasn't stuck here, like Ed. An upside-down world where nothing made sense and people could move mountains by dancing. Considering when Ed asked around, that nobody had seen or heard of Ling or Envy, at least nobody he met, chances were that Ling was back in a mistress. That was good. He didn't need to know that he messed up any more than he already had. Wait, a prince? Toph raised an eyebrow. If I wasn't a human lie detector, I would absolutely call crap. I wish it was crap. We didn't exactly meet on the best terms. Had to take my arm off to surprise the guy enough to sneak attack him. Ed grumbled. He still hated the fact that he had been so completely caught off guard by the man, and so quickly at that. He didn't take much pride in his status as a state alchemist, but the training should have been enough to keep him from getting floored that quickly. Unfortunately, he was getting his ass kicked way too often for that to still be true. The girl in front of him was a testament to that. He was only here because he lost a bet and got his ass kicked. Again. Wait, you can just pull your arm off? Toph asked. I mean, I knew it was metal, but... I used to be able to, Ed replied. I know somebody. She's basically a mechanic. She could put it back together whenever I dented it. Even if she'd nearly kill me whenever it happened, but she's nowhere near here. If I do that again, I'll end up really screwing myself. A mechanic, huh? Is she one of these alchemists too? No, Ed shook his head. Just a mechanic. Who can make new body parts? She continued. So, to recap, you fought a prince, you can bend elements by clapping, but apparently you're on a bender. And, according to everyone at the tournament, you have a hair and eye color that nobody else does. And people where you come from can replace limbs with metal. Your hometown sounds really fun. Oh yeah, it's a real thrill ride, Ed said, the annoyances that had built up over the last few months alone piling onto him. Between the Philosopher's Stone, Bradley, the homunculi, Greed, being hunted by Scar, Hughes dying. He was homesick, but not for the country itself. That place had started to get on his last nerve. He had barely noticed that while he was lost in thought, Toph had lumbered her way out of his sight and into a bush. When she came out of it, she looked different. Her hair was pushed out of her eyes, pinned into a bun. A robe far too big for her hung over her body like a cloth. Upon seeing her, Ed suppressed a snicker building up in his body. I can throw you out of this lawn, Full Metal. Bet I could even launch you a couple dozen feet, send you soaring real high, she snarled. Didn't say anything, I just don't think it suits you. Ed looked away. If he looked at it anymore, he had no doubt he would burst into laughter loud enough to wake the city. In the stands, Toph looked like a badass warrior. Someone who he could see fighting side by side with him as a fellow dog of the military. But now... You look like a 5-year-old. He wasn't wrong. The way her clothes, far too big for her, dragged across the floor made her look like a kid playing aristocrat. With a single swipe of her foot, she launched Ed into a bush that she had just been hiding in, the boy landing face first in the foliage. He would have busted out to curse her out, but something stopped him, a shadow appearing next to Toph, a man clad in robes of his own. From the way he moved around Toph, he clearly thought of her as important. It was the same way people moved around him when he first got his state alchemist badge, when he had rank over them. Importance. But even behind the surface level respect and reverence he got, there was always something else there too. People treated him like, well, like a kid. Like he was fragile. Like it was cute that he sported the same rank as higher-ups, and it pissed him off every time. And he saw that in the way this guy moved too. My lady? The man moved beside Toph, gently grabbing her hand, almost like he was afraid he would break it if he moved too quickly. I've been looking all over for you. Did you get lost again? Toph stiffened in response to the question, her entire body going rigid like a statue. Yes, she lied through her teeth. I got distracted and I couldn't find my way back. I'm sorry. she said, her voice layered with sweetness. So much sweetness that Ed felt the need to gag just being exposed to it. That's okay, my lady. Please allow me to guide you back. We can't have you wandering about like this, especially not when there are guests about. He smiled, overly politely. Toph gave the man a nod. But then she paused. Wait, yes? She asked. Ed might have not been able to read her thoughts from a mile away like she could apparently do, but he had seen enough to know that she was caught off guard. Very caught off guard. Judging by the way the girl, who in the short time Ed had known her, had made every single motion so sure of herself with no hesitation or pauses, nothing, was now shuffling her feet like she was being scolded, she was nervous. The girl who had flipped an entire arena when the two of them went toe-to-toe with each other was nervous. That didn't bode very well. Yes, he continued, even though his voice seemed to shift slightly. There was a hint of surprise in it. Clearly he hadn't been expecting it either. Rather important ones at that, but you don't need to concern yourself too much. He patted her head. You just need to be there. If Ed's treatment from his own superiors pissed him off a little, this was another level. Nobody would go this far with him. Even as a cute dog of the military, Ed still had a reputation for being willing to deck someone if they went too far, and it was a very well-earned one at that. It was the only way people would have accepted someone who ranked well above them but wasn't even half their age, let alone half their height. Toph was much more composed in this situation than he would have been. Ed could have sworn he saw her eye twitch, but the man before her didn't seem to notice. That's okay, but first, I left something in the bushes. Do you think I can grab it before we leave? Toph asked. Lady Beifong, we can't have you getting filthy by dragging yourself through the foliage. Not to mention the pointed edges on the branch, you could get hurt. He replied, explaining it like he was teaching a class to a particularly difficult student. I'm actually gonna kill this guy, Ed thought, watching the scene unfold. It's not even me and I still can't listen to this shit. He could feel his automail arm twitching, and he wondered if Toph would be too angry if he rearranged the guy's face. Just one punch with his metal fist couldn't hurt too bad, right? I spend all my time here. It's as far out as I can go, Toph argued. Even I can't hurt myself doing something I've done 1,000 times, right? She asked. Her family's guard seemed to consider it for a while, weighing his options. Okay, but I'll be right here, he reassured a girl who needed no reassurance. If you need me to drag you out, just say so. I'll do it in a heartbeat. Toph smiled at him as she turned around. Walking all of 10 steps before she knelt down by the bush Ed was crouched in. She grabbed a comb that was laid on the floor next to him, along with her normal clothes. Are you gonna explain to me what the hell that was? Ed asked in a hushed, aggressive whisper. That was not important, Toph said back. Not important? I'm amazed you didn't punt that guy into the clouds. How the hell are you okay with him treating you like that? Ed said. Toph paused, tilting her head down, as a sigh trickled out of her mouth. It's just something I have to deal with. You wouldn't get it. Try me. Believe me, I probably would, Ed replied. Toph felt his pulse beneath the earth, his breathing, his reaction, everything. He really did find what just happened to her to be familiar. She never had that experience before. Shared suffering. And you don't have to put up with it, he continued. Toph let silence fall between the two of them. Just stay here. I'll be back as soon as I can, alright? Yeah, fine, Ed replied. Toph nodded to him. She got up, walking back to the soldier who smiled at her, dusting her off slightly as he led her, hand in hand, to her home. We are truly honored to have you here with us, Princess Azula, Zhao Beifong said, bowing to the girl in front of him. He hadn't particularly liked the Fire Nation, but they had been kind to his family since they had begun moving through the area. He knew better than to start a fight with them. If he was supportive, once they inevitably took Gaoling, there wouldn't be an issue. The Beifong family would be allowed to continue as they always had, and nobody would get in their way. To what do I owe the pleasure of your presence? Azula and Mai sat across from them. Azula looked at the ground. This was what passed for a mansion in the Earth Kingdom. It was truly a sad state of affairs. Such a sparse place. But It was a relief to be able to drop the disguise, for now. The honor is mine, Beifong. Azula gave a polite bow of her head, a simple ceremonial gesture. Since your family is... The door opened behind her, making Azula glance back. It was one of the soldiers of the family, walking hand in hand with a girl, the young daughter of the Beifong family, if she had to guess. I am terribly sorry for my daughter's tardiness. You'll have to forgive her, she's blind. She can't make her way around here without aid. He replied. Azula all but ignored her presence, giving the man a polite smile. Of course, there's no issue. I did say I would like to speak with your family. I can make concessions to make sure that's possible. She replied, as Toph was led beside her mother and father. Azula clicked her tongue in annoyance. She did want to speak with every member of the family, but clearly that wasn't necessary anymore. If she had known that her daughter literally couldn't be a witness to the Avatar sighting, she would have never requested her. As I was saying, since your family is the most powerful in the city, I imagine you're also the most well-connected. Surely a family as intelligent as yours would use their power to familiarize themselves with their surroundings, she asked. She saw Mai out of the corner of her eye, tugging at Azula's shirt. She slapped her hand away as discreetly as she could. She didn't want to hear how bored the girl was again. Of course, Lord Beifong replied, a smile on his face. His posture puffed itself up with every little compliment Azula threw his way. If that is the case, we would very much like to ask for your help. We are looking for a young man who passed through this area not too long ago. She reached into her bag and pulled out drawings that Mai had made based on the interviews Azula had conducted while posing as an average citizen. The face of a young man staring back at her through the page was partially hidden by the bangs on his forehead. The ponytail on his back flowed over his shoulder. There is a detail we unfortunately couldn't capture with the tools we had, but there is something you wouldn't be able to miss. He had very striking colors on his person. Golden hair and a bright red coat. Azula paused. As the details flowed out of her mouth, she watched as the daughter of the Beifong family seemed to tense. The motion was so slight that she almost overlooked it. Almost, but the girl was blind. She had to be led around by hand. Azula had to be seeing things. The young Beifong wouldn't be able to picture the things she said, let alone point her in the right direction. Even golden eyes, if you can believe it. I see. Would you be able to tell me what the young man is being pursued for? Lady Beifong asked. Her husband looked at her in half panic, knowing that anything these days could be seen as questioning the Fire Nation, something that could easily ruin their future. Thankfully for him, Azula laughed it off. I understand. You wouldn't want us on a manhunt for someone who didn't do anything after all. You're in charge here. People need to trust your judgment, Azula replied calmly. Mai glanced at her. It was scary just how easily she could do that. How easily she could turn on the whole innocent princess routine. The Azula who wouldn't hurt a fly. The fabrication. I assure you we don't want to hurt him, she smiled kindly. The only way you could see the malice in her eyes was if you looked for it. We just have some questions for him. He got into a little skirmish with some of your soldiers a few days ago, and in that skirmish he turned water into ice, freezing the man in place. Interesting. So you're saying a waterbender entered the Earth Kingdom? Lord Beifong replied. Azula shook her head. In the same battle, they tried to detain him with a wall of rock, and he dissolved that wall. Earth and water? Two elements. Lord Beifong stared wide-eyed. That could only mean one thing. He's one of the Avatars. It's certainly a possibility. We aren't sure whether to believe such a ridiculous notion, but we would like to be sure. As Azula talked, she noticed something. The younger daughter had gone completely still, silent. She wasn't even allowing herself to face forward in the moment. It was like her body itself was tilted toward the ground. And despite the fact that her hands were flat against her chair, Azula could see them twitching, practically trying to move into the position where she would be clutching at her leg. She probably was forcing herself not to do that because it would look too suspicious. She was nervous. It was at this point that Azula turned back to Mai, seeing if she saw the same thing. And Mai took the opportunity to point out something that she had been trying to point out to Azula the whole time. She gestured very subtly to the girl's feet. Azula looked at them. They were rough, calloused, the feet of an earthbender, and a very active one at that. Azula let her bangs fall over her lower face, hiding the wide smile that she grew. Of course, if you don't know, there's nothing I can really do about it, can I? Lord and Lady Beifong looked down at the paper and then back up to their guests. I do believe I've heard of such an incident, Lord Beifong said, a slight hitch developing in his voice. I only heard about the earthbending aspect. Unfortunately, I didn't follow up on the news on this individual, but I certainly can find him for you if you give me time. Why, certainly. Why wouldn't I? Azula nodded. I shall be back in the morning, but in the meantime, do you mind if I have a quick word with your child? The two older Beifongs looked at each other. I don't understand. What could you possibly want with her? You misunderstand. You see, as the future Fire Lord, it's my responsibility to make connections with other important future leaders. I imagine that eventually, even if your daughter won't be leaving this house very much, she will ascend to a very important place in your family, and thus this city as a whole, Azula replied. Her father paused, seeming to nod. Very likely. It would be next to impossible for my daughter to run things as we have, on her own, especially considering her fragility. But we should still be able to gain her some kind of power in this world, even if that's through other means. Marriage, for example. Exactly. One way or another, she'll be an incredibly important person in this region, Azula replied. She watched for Toph's reaction. The girl seemed to stiffen a bit more at the prospect of being married off. Her reaction was less of surprise, but irritation. Azula smiled. She was getting more of a glimpse of the real girl, not the front that she was clearly putting up. Well, I would like to begin nurturing this relationship if I can. I'm certain you have no objections to such a thing. She continued. Toph's parents looked to each other, nodding as they got up. Her father placed a hand on Toph's shoulder, a seemingly supportive gesture, but one that seemed to make Toph look even more irritated as the other two disappeared. Azula watched as the girl took a deep breath. To anyone else, she would look just as composed as she did before, but Azula could see some of the tension leaving her body. Now the girl looked much more composed, far more put together. Toph bowed politely at Azula. I don't know what you can possibly want with me, she said patiently, but I'll be happy to serve you in any way I can. Is that so? Azula said. She stood up, cracking her neck. Then I would kindly ask that you got to your feet. Toph did as she was told, standing to her full length. I noticed something while I was talking with your parents. You seemed a bit nervous. Is there a reason for that? I think anybody would be nervous in the presence of someone like you, Toph replied. At this point, she was forcing her mouth shut so hard she could practically feel her teeth chipping. Is that so? Wow, that's a very kind thing of you to say. And you're completely blind, yes? Azula asked, taking a few steps toward Toph. She was only a few inches away from her face at this point. It's just like my parents say, Toph replied. She didn't allow her facial muscles to move. She forced them to remain still. Surprisingly, that bit of strength required more effort from her than most of her earthbending moves. Azula looked into the girl's eyes and nodded. There wasn't any light reflecting from them. She couldn't be faking that. She couldn't be, and yet Azula doubted it mattered. In fact, as she talked to this girl, seeing very little hesitation or fear anywhere in her body, she was more and more sure that she was on the right track. If anybody in this house knew what she was talking about, it was her. She might not be that useless to her after all. Well, that's certainly interesting. And you never leave this house? Azula asked. Toph shook her head. You know, I really don't want to hurt him, Azula continued. Even if he is the Avatar, I'm sure he can be made to realize just how good the world is right now. She waited to see if Toph would have a physical response. She gave none. After all, it's not his fault. No one can control the circumstances of your birth. I'm sure you're well aware of that. And what's that supposed to mean? Toph asked. Oh, I don't mean anything by it, Azula replied. Only that you don't seem particularly happy. When you were sitting with your parents, I couldn't help but notice how tense you looked. And I'm sure you don't appreciate how much they look down on you. A capable young woman like yourself being treated like an infant. Azula let her mask slip just a little bit. Capable? Toph couldn't help but grin. Even if it meant she was in a little bit more danger with this woman. It gave her a little bit more of a window into who Toph really was. Into the fact that she was just playing along with her parents. But she couldn't help it. Just being in the presence of somebody who didn't treat her like she was made of glass made her smile, even if it was this lady. It was pointed out to me during our talk. Azula looked down at Toph's feet. You're an earthbender, aren't you? And a very heavily practiced one. It's certainly a shame, that kind of talent going to waste in a place like this, with people who are literally intending to give you away. Would they even like you if you told them the truth? If you broke the little delusion that they created? Look, lady, I don't know why you're so insistent on this, but I'm telling you, I have no idea what you're talking about. You're just wasting your time, Toph replied. No, at this point I'm certain I'm right on the money, Azula said back. You see, the signs of recognition that you made were pretty unmistakable. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've learned to read people very well. Meaning that you know who I'm looking for, but you're refusing to give him up for some reason. Even if it would help your family here. And, if I'm being honest, you almost seemed to relax when I said you were capable. Meaning you don't like being looked down on in the way I'm imagining you are here all the time. So I'm willing to wager that you wouldn't give up the Avatar under any circumstances, because you've already met him, and he treated you like an equal, something you're so desperately clawing for. How am I doing? She leaned closer to Toph, and Toph inched backwards in response, immediately proving Azula's point that she had some kind of spatial awareness. Toph partially kicked herself for allowing Azula even the slightest bit more insight into her. Fine, say you're right and I did meet the guy, Toph said. I would have barely known him. What, you think I'm gonna throw myself in front of you for him? Just because he doesn't treat me with kid hands? I think the theory is worth a shot, Azula replied with a grin. Lord and Lady Beifong, will you come out here, please? Toph's parents responded to Azula shouting, walking out into the main room. Azula gestured for Mai to open the doors behind her. Sighing, she followed Azula's lead, opening the doors out into the lawn. Follow me, Azula ordered. The parents of Toph Beifong did as they were told, following Azula out into the path of the lawn. The wind was blowing just enough that Ed could just about make out the flowing hair of Azula in the distance. He squinted. Judging from her armor, the lady was bad news. It was designed to be intimidating. It was designed so you could see the silhouette of a soldier and panic. He would know. It was a common military tactic, even in a mistress. What exactly is the meaning of this, Princess? Lord Beifong asked. Well, that's a very good question. You see, I've gotten into the habit of knowing people. It's a requirement when the Fire Lord sends you here and there to maintain his empire. Especially when you know it's going to be yours one day. She smiled, looking around their house. Your daughter is hiding something from you. Well, she's hiding several somethings, but only one important thing, that is to you. Something that if you knew, it would most likely end your relationship with her in its current state, stunting it forever. She dropped her mask entirely, letting loose a smile that showed that she was having the time of her life. What is the meaning of this? My child has no capacity to hide anything, Lord Beifong shouted. I don't know what could have happened that... Azula held a finger to her lips. In response, Mai held a knife to Lord Beifong's throat. It's not your turn to talk. I've realized that you're completely immaterial to this moment. In other words, probably for the first time in your life, you're not very important. She turned to Toph. Given how nervous you were, I have a feeling that you were in the middle of helping him. You would have brought him here. Given your family's fame, the people out there most likely know your face. So I imagine finding some kind of supplies or resources to give him, without kicking up much of a fuss, would only be able to be done at your own home, where you'd have some modicum of privacy. Am I right? Azula asked. From his crouched position, Ed heard her voice. It was practically banging against his ears. Fuck, he muttered in his mind. This was bad. 5 minutes in this place and somebody was already breathing down his neck. He couldn't dig his way out. The light from his alchemy would be seen a mile away. He could try to crawl his way away if he was careful, but one wrong move would have gotten him seen. Just when he decided to try anyway, a small bit of rock blocked his foot, locking it in place. He looked ahead, seeing Toph, her face partially directed towards him. Despite the fact that he knew she couldn't see, he could tell she was giving him a warning glare. "Stay put. Don't risk yourself. I got this." He shook his head. She clearly didn't know the kind of person she was messing with. He never met the girl, but he could see on Azula's face. Well, he could see that she was like a lot of the people that he knew from back home. And not in a good way. "So, is this your plan? You're gonna monologue at me?" Toph tilted her head. "No, dear, not at all. I figured something out. You seem rather nervous right now. And given that you are more than likely an above-average earthbender, I doubt you're nervous about yourself. Which means you're either worried about your parents here or the boy. And given how your parents treat you, I'm imagining it's the boy." She leaned down, her face directly across from Toph's own. "You said that you barely knew him and that you wouldn't care. So, in order to prove you wrong," she grew an even wider smile, "I'm going to burn the outside of your house down." The last bit she whispered into Toph's ear, making sure that only she could hear it. Toph flinched. She couldn't help it this time. "Oh, an actual reaction from you. How lovely." A spark ignited in Azula's hand, a blue flame dancing around her arm. "You can stop me. I'm sure you could run and go and get him before I could even do anything. You could probably, maybe, even face me in a one-on-one. But what are your parents going to think about that?" Toph's parents were still under Mai's threat. Her father tried to thrash, to get out of Mai's grip. He stopped when Mai pressed her blade the slightest bit closer into his neck, a bit of blood trickling out. "So which will it be? Save the boy or protect your life back home? I guess we'll find out which direction you're leaning." She launched a firebolt at one corner of the garden. It exploded on contact. Thankfully, Ed wasn't in it. Its fire rose up in a wide plume of blue smoke, the fire completely enveloping around a quarter of the garden. She did it again, thankfully also not where Ed was. But she was doing it corner by corner, and there were only 2 corners of the garden left. Azula was right. Toph was going to have to make a choice, and she was going to have to make one now. Azula's spark grew in her hand as she looked toward the corner that Toph had stuffed Ed in. She prepared to throw a blast, but before she could finish her arc, her hand was pushed up into the air, a giant rock pillar aiming it directly upwards. She threw her blast, and it went towards the sky, exploding midair. Toph breathed out a sigh of relief. She had made it, just barely. "My daughter." Toph could hear the dissonance in her father's voice. She could hear how he felt about her, falling apart in mere seconds. Those feelings crumbling to dust as though they were never there in the first place. "And so you've made your decision." "Shut it, lady!" Toph shouted as she looked over to the bushes, shouting at the top of her lungs. "A little help here, Full Metal!" A spark of light shot out of the woods, and the next second, chains appeared out of the ground, made of earth, wrapping around Azula's body and pinning her to the floor. Her eyes widened. She had never seen earthbending so precise before. It would seem that her brother was indeed onto something. Ed shot out of the bushes. "Really? You put a boulder around my foot?" "You would have run away if I didn't," Toph replied bluntly. Next to her, Mai rushed at the boy. She drew back one of her blades and thrusted it forward with all of her weight behind it. Ed blocked it with his metal hand. Mai's eyes widened as the sound of metal thunking through the air was heard. She attempted to plunge her blade into the boy's white-gloved hand, but not a single drop of blood was extracted. Before she could react to that, Ed spun around, kicking her with his robotic leg, sending her flying a good 20 feet into the air. While this fight raged on, Toph looked back at her parents. I... she began. Her father looked down, glancing at the 2 people he had invited into his home, who invaded his home, and begun burning things to the ground. At his daughter, who he had just seen perform more technically impressive earthbending feats than anybody he had seen in the last few decades, and he employed quite a few. "I will always love you, my dear. It's okay," he said, his voice layered in kindness, but there was something underneath, something Toph didn't want to think about. She was just trying to focus on his words. The background faded in Toph's mind. Azula snarling as she melted away Ed's makeshift chains. The sound of her angry roaring drifted, into the back of Toph's consciousness. You don't have to worry about anything, my daughter. We can fix this. Toph's eyes widened. Wait, fix this? Her father nodded rapidly, her mother looking at her from the other side. Of course, dear, we can fix this. Her mother brought Toph into a hug. Both of them watched as Azula finished breaking through her chains. They snapped as she made her way toward Ed. They seemed to be ignoring the situation, now that Azula's anger wasn't directed at them. We can make sure none of this ever happens again. Your mother's right. You never should have had to learn something as dangerous as earthbending, her father added on. Toph broke from their grip, stepping away from them. At this point, Azula was slashing against Ed, trying to use her flaming whips that she had conjured to burn him into submission. Ed clapped his hands, morphing the ground beneath him, into shield after shield for himself, each of which crumbled beneath her flames. I like earthbending. It's not a bad thing that I learned it. It's not a bad thing that I learned how to fight. That's what I want, Toph said, half screaming over the sound of fighting in the background. Her parents looked at each other, and then back at her. You must have been corrupted somewhere. It's okay, that won't happen anymore. We just have to keep a closer eye on you. Toph's blood ran cold as her father's words rang through her head. Her parents faded away from her senses as she turned herself inward. This was going to be her life, no matter what. She was never going to get out of this, was she? Her parents would always view her as some fragile, broken kitten that needed to be coddled. She tried one more time to have them hear her voice. I don't need to be taken care of. It was the most that she ever let herself sound like she was pleading. Without missing a beat, her father looked at her, shaking his head and sighing in disappointment. My dear, of course you do. In that moment, Toph's mind moved back out. The things that had faded into the background were fading back in. She could hear the clash of metal. Using her extra senses, she observed as Ed proceeded to punch the knives sent his way, using his so-called alchemy to continue making temporary barriers against Azula. He was on the back foot, and there was no escape route for him. Not yet, at least, but she could make one. She would make one. For both of them. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't be the daughter you wanted, Toph said quietly, turning to Ed. With one motion, she created a rock wall that pushed her parents far outside of her view. She could hear their muffled shouting, but she drowned it out completely, focusing only on the people in front of her. They weren't paying attention to her anymore, and that was their mistake. Toph stomped on the ground. A single rock pillar jutted out, striking Mai in the gut. Ed might have knocked Mai to her knees a couple of times, but that shot was enough to knock all the wind out of her. It incapacitated her. Azula took her eyes off of Ed in response, surprised, and that was her mistake. In the brief second Azula wasn't paying attention, Ed clapped his hands, transmuting the ground beneath him into what appeared to be a bat, slamming it directly into Azula's gut. She coughed out spit as she stared down at it. She didn't understand. That wasn't normal bending, and it was with metal? She barely had time to comprehend that before a headbutt from Ed brought her to her knees. A quick swipe of Toph's foot sent her moving in the other direction, flying into the eastward hedge wall. Toph quickly dashed into the bushes, grabbing her comfortable clothes and moving beside Ed, grabbing him by the back of his jacket. Well, looks like supplies are a bust. We gotta go now. Wait, we? Ed asked, a boulder appearing beneath them, carrying them up and out of the area. Yeah, we. You're stuck with me, Full Metal. You got a problem with that? Toph asked. She had no idea where Ed was going, no idea where Amestris was, what alchemy did, if any of it even made sense. She had no idea if this goal of his was even achievable. But she would rather follow this boy on whatever weird mission he wanted to drag her across the world with than stick here and rot, even if she had to run from her parents to do it. Ed looked back at the building where Toph's parents were. He recognized what she was saying. Ed would rather die than see his old man again. At least that's what he told himself 1,000 times over. He'd be one hell of a hypocrite if he stopped somebody else from escaping theirs. You do realize I'm not going to pay you or anything, right? I don't even know how much money I have, he said. He didn't know this kingdom's currency very well. He just knew that Toph had given him a sack of metal coins when she won their fight in the arena. We can sort out the payment details after we get as far as possible from the flaming lady. Toph cut in, a smile breaking out across her face. She was still having fun. She felt so free right now. And she had barely taken a step outside of her home. Imagine how much more free she would feel if she just got a little farther away from this place. Zuko grunted. He stared up at the soldiers from within his chair. He was basically latched to it. His uncle was beside him, as calm as ever. But Zuko barely noticed his presence beneath his own irritation. This whole thing was ridiculous. He would have to teach Zhao a lesson after this. If he could. If there even was going to be an after this. For all he knew, Zhao was going to try and kill him. My search party is ready. Once we're together, my guards will escort you back to your ship and you'll be free to go. Zhao's smooth voice rang through the air, with an almost musical tone. Zuko scoffed. Then why am I even here? What's the point in dragging me into your little camp? Just showing me the ambiance? Prince Zuko. He heard his uncle's warning. He didn't pay attention to it. Or are you just worried I'll capture the Avatars before you? Zuko tilted his head. Zhao narrowed his eyes, growling like an animal, before bringing an uppity smile back onto his face. Why would I possibly be concerned? I'm in charge of far more Fire Nation fleets than you could ever hope to be. I'm a force in of myself, and you're just one banished prince. Zhao said, lifting his face slightly closer to Zuko's. I'm about to achieve more honor in one moment than you could ever hope to dream of in your entire life. What could you possibly know about honor? Zuko spat. You're holding me hostage so you can get a running start. If you really care about the Fire Nation, you wouldn't be impeding the progress of one of the only people who can bring in two of its greatest enemies. Zhao found himself laughing. There's a great deal of doubt about whether the Avatars are even still alive. But thanks to you, there's now enough proof for some actually important people to start looking. I just prefer that somebody this incompetent doesn't get in my way. Sorry that you're not going to be able to get back into your father's good graces. If I were you, I'd start looking for a lovely Earth Kingdom town to settle down in. Zuko snarled, and Zhao let out an even bigger grin, one that looked like he was on the verge of laughter. What's the matter, Prince Zuko? I can't be telling you something you don't already know. Without the Avatars, you're nothing. Your father will never let you back in. He doesn't want you. Zuko's eyes widened. He felt a cold chill move through his heart as his blood pumped erratically, his mind flashing back to a conversation he had with Korra, with the Avatar, when she was still in his custody. Everybody thought the Avatars were dead. It doesn't really sound like he wanted you back if that's the task he gave you. There was no malice in the girl's words. She just sounded sad. Somehow, that irritated Zuko more than the many moments people had just talked down to him throughout his life. Your father doesn't even want you. If your father wanted you home, he would have let you return by now. Avatars or not. Zhao continued. Zuko felt his arms twitching in response, his hand involuntarily clenching to his side, into a fist with the grip of iron. You don't know what you're talking about. Zuko got closer to the man's face. For a second, it was like his voice echoed. He had said the exact same thing to Korra, and he heard the same thing in response that he did from Zhao. You have the scar to prove it. Zhao's voice when he said it was harsh and cruel, like he was trying to get under Zuko's skin. Korra's was pleading, like she was trying to get him to see the most obvious thing in the world. He wasn't sure which was worse in the moment. They were both drilling into his skull like hammers. How about I give you one to match? Zuko responded, before he even knew what he was saying. Zhao got even closer to his face. And what exactly does that mean, young prince? A duel. Agni Kai, Zuko replied. His uncle slapped his hand against his face. The boy had once again talked without thinking. Zhao smirked, a wide grin enveloping his entire face. You've got yourself a deal, Prince Zuko. Korra really couldn't understand what was happening. One second she was staring Sokka in the face, and the next second she was gone. It felt strange, like she was in a void. She couldn't feel anything but anger. She couldn't feel anything but her heart beating in her ears. And she couldn't see anything but darkness. And then there was light. There was Aang, shining in a transparent blue body directly across from her. In the background, she could barely make out faces. Dozens, hundreds, thousands of them feeding into him. The previous Avatars, letting their power flow through Aang, their anger, their rage, all of it feeding into his own, feeding into her own, the two of their hearts beating as one. "Aang, please, you have to stop." She could hear a voice echo out through the area. It was Katara's, soft and pleading and kind. Aang's body was flickering in illumination as the voice hit his ears. "Korra, calm down, I'm still here. Whatever's happening, I know you can fight it." Korra heard Sokka's voice hit her own ears. She allowed herself to focus on it, to feel it pulling her in. It grounded her just enough in the moment to move towards Aang in this weird spirit world. She watched as the boy's eyes locked onto hers, the anger in them still evident, his brows furrowed in unyielding rage. And in that moment, she understood everything. She understood what happened, what he saw. It was like she could feel the weight of his loss. She grabbed onto the boy's arms and locked onto them with an iron grip, as she did the only thing she could think of. She hugged him. Somehow, the two of them could feel something else touching them. They could feel Katara's hands dragging them down through Aang's body. Korra could feel Aang fighting it. She could feel that feeling in her gut. That feeling that he was alone, completely alone, that his people had just been obliterated. There was nobody who could understand what he was like. Not his friends, not anyone. His family was dead. "You're not alone," Korra whispered. The boy seemed to snap more into the moment. "You have this big destiny thrust on you, and it's gotten under your skin. I get that because I'm the same. We're both the Avatar. That alone makes us family." Aang looked into the girl's eyes. He could feel both her and Katara staring at him. Both of their eyes pleading with him to stop, to calm down, to breathe, to let go. And he did. He allowed himself to sink back into reality. Korra let out a sigh of relief, as her body was basically yanked back into her soul. She shot up, looking around. She could see the rubble flung through the area. Whatever wind she kicked up must have really been something. "Hey, Sokka, are you okay?" she shouted. She saw the boy's head peek out from a corner of the statue. There was a monkey lemur tucked behind his back, leaning out from behind him too. The same one that had been following them around the temple. "Huh? Yeah, I'm fine. Totally fine. I wasn't scared. Not even a little bit." He smiled. Korra rolled her eyes, but she was just thankful that he was okay, that she hadn't hurt him. Then, he said something that she hadn't expected. Are you okay?" he asked. She looked up at him. She had been the cause of this entire mess in the first place. But he was worried about her. She let herself smile. "Yeah, I'm fine." Hey everybody, I really hope you enjoyed another episode of my only non-Earth OCU series, The Avatars and The Alchemist. I am honestly incredibly excited to be back to this one. I've been dying to get back into the series for a very long time, but I was super busy with all of the other ones. And I was honestly a little bit nervous that people might not want to watch it, especially since more and more people have been coming to my channel for the Earth OCU stuff, which I am incredibly grateful for. But that's partially the reason why the last episode of this series was over 9 months ago. 9 months, can you believe it? So why did I finally come back to this? Well, it's for a couple of reasons. One was I was having a little bit of burnout working on the regular Earth OCU stuff. So I was trying to stretch my creativity again, and I decided to step back into the story. And once I did, a massive overflow of creative energy just poured out of me. So much, in fact, that I wrote multiple scripts for the series back to back with each other in a much shorter time than I expected. And when you think about that, that kind of makes sense. I mean, if you look at my catalog, I make a lot of videos. And my videos are usually pretty long, with all of them focusing on the Earth OCU universe. And despite the fact that my stories are so diverse, focusing solely on one world to build can be a little creatively stunting, no matter how much you love it. And because of that, I do want to focus a little bit more on this series on my channel as it moves forward. These videos allow me to experiment a little bit more with worlds outside of my massive connected universe, and even allow me to get a bit more creative with video formatting. You might notice that this video looks pretty different than most Earth OCU stuff, and that was on purpose. This video isn't a part of the Earth OCU universe, so I was able to make it a bit more visually different. And I want to keep being able to experiment with different stories and different stuff like that. That certainly doesn't mean any of the Earth OCU stuff is going to be taking a backseat, but I want to update this more. I just feel a lot more creative about this right now, and I want to do something with that. So, I genuinely hope you guys will be along with the ride. And I really hope that you guys enjoyed stepping back into the story, even though it's been such a long time. Don't worry, there is an Earth OCU video coming up soon. The next video is in the My Hero Academia series, so I hope you're ready for that. In the meantime, I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. I had a ton of fun making it. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like to let me know. And be sure to comment to let me know what you enjoyed about it. And finally, if you want to stick around, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on this or the future of any other series that I produce. In the meantime, I've been your captain, and it's been a pleasure to take you on a tour of not the strongest Earth in the multiverse, but definitely an interesting one. Thank you for watching. Bye now!